Friends, in this next episode of the podcast, I'm bringing to you someone that I met very recently in September of last year at the Poshmark conference. Of course, you meet people at conferences and you never really know their story. But this woman, I definitely got to know her and I found her to be super inspiring, a courageous lady, someone who has been through the ringer and is trying the best to do whatever she can to bring progress into what she does. Her name is Crystal C Romero. She's an American hero. She's a pain in the activist. She's a veteran advocate, Save a Warrior, and Heroic Hearts Project alumni. Someone you do not want to mess with, somebody who's a badass. And I definitely want you all to get to know her so much more through this next two episodes that we do for her. It's a two-parter because there's a lot of really good information that you're going to learn. After I watched the Vanessa Guillen documentary, after knowing her story, I needed to know more about what goes on inside the military, inside the army, and what role we can take to help people like Crystal who are fighting the army for restitution of their record. She is a master sergeant. She retired after 16 and a half years in the U.S. Army National Guard. She served full-time active duty operational support and mostly in her home state of New Mexico. Today, she's an activist for veterans' causes and has a significant role in passing legislation related to military sexual assault and veterans' mental health. She's got so many awards. I need to tell you about them because they're super important. She has the Meritorious Service Medal, the Army Commendation Medal 3 times, Army Achievement Medal 4 times, Reserve Overseas Service Ribbon, the National Defense Service Medal, the Non-Commissioned Officer Professional Development Ribbon 3 times, Army Service Ribbon, and the Global War on Terrorism Service Medal. Again, she's a pain in the activist, someone I want you all to get to know. This month of March is a big month for women, but I want to bring women who are doing things in a different way. And she's got a GoFundMe account that I'm also going to be linking here because she's also trying to get her military record fixed. And in order for her to be able to do that, she needs money to pay for her legal fees. She's been doing this for years, guys. She's been trying for years and years to get them to do the right thing. And until recently, she retained an attorney. She used all her savings, and I'm hopeful that this will give you all an idea of what she's working towards and how we can help her. Like I said, I'm going to link her GoFundMe account here. It's legal fees for MSG, tired Crystal Romero. And so definitely it's going to be on here. And I want you all to get to know her and tell me what you think about her story. And if it inspires you to donate to her, please feel free to do so. I'm hoping that this brings light to some of the things that are going on in the military and the things that women have to face in order for them to be heard. So listen in on that one. Let me know what you think. And here it is. Enjoy. Tell us a little bit about you and just tell my listeners a little bit about your story and kind of your background.
Well, again, thank you for having me. And I'm sure I'm happy to share my story with you and others. My name is Crystal Romero. I'm from New Mexico. I grew up kind of all over the place. I was born to a 14-year-old. So, I can imagine, you can probably imagine what it's like, a child having a child.
Yeah.
I grew up in a very impoverished situation. And my mom was very young. She did her best with what she knew, but my mom also came from trauma. So, which is why I fell victim to a lot of abuse as a child, a lot of child abuse, um, and sexual abuse from a young age. And at the age of 14, I was trafficked to Colorado by whom I thought, I was, this is like 1993 when like chat rooms were real popular.
Yeah, they were starting up. Yeah, like the
They were starting
AOL
up
chat
in
rooms.
the AOL chat rooms.
Yeah,
Yep. And
I
I found a
remember.
chat. Yeah. And I found a chat room about music. And I thought I was chatting with a 16-year-old boy.
Mm-hmm.
And after months of chatting, and they, these um, these traffickers are manipulators and they're masterminds. So what he was doing was grooming me,
Mm-hmm.
and after after months of doing that, he convinced me to steal money and buy a bus ticket,
Yeah.
and off to Colorado I went. I ran away and I went to Colorado, except it wasn't a 16-year-old boy, it was a 42-year-old man. And I was um, I was held for several days, but I was also a very clever kid, so I was able to um, escape that situation. And but my mental state was not, it was not right after that. I
Mm-hmm.
was very defiant, very angry, very just very unstable. I had no, there back then there was no trauma informed care. It was, I got yelled at. I was made to believe that that was my fault. I was
Mm-hmm.
made to feel that the most horrible thing that I could ever experience in my life was my fault and that I asked for that.
Yeah.
So I,
You were what,
I,
14?
mhm.
14, 15?
So 14, 15 years old.
Okay.
And then I became a ward of the state, and I went into the foster care system
Mm-hmm.
where, um, and something that I think people need to know about the foster care system is that, it's not white picket house, white house, fancy houses with white picket fences outside. It's low income people that are willing to take in children for money.
Yeah.
And that was exactly the situation. I was a paycheck to some low income people.
Do they do
And
background checks on these foster families? Are there background checks on them? And you know how they go through like when there people want to adopt, they do like a whole psych test and they go in and talk to people. How are they vetted?
I'm sure that now there's a little bit more structure, but this is like, this is a long time ago. And I can tell you based on my experience that those
Mhm.
people were definitely not vetted correctly.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
My foster father was definitely a predator, and so was the son, the oldest son. I was actually kicked out of foster care because I walked in on my foster father molesting my 8-year-old foster sister, and I stabbed him in the shoulder with a fork.
Uh-oh.
And my only regret was I didn't grab a knife. I wish I would have grabbed a knife. But of course, I got in trouble, and then
Mhm.
I got moved to Albuquerque, New Mexico, and placed in a group home by a company. The company was Hogares, and it was like group homes for disgruntled teenagers.
Uh-huh. The
You know,
the
that was
the
that
the
was
troubled teen industry, right?
hmm right. Like it's like we asked for that, right? Like we
Uh-huh.
created that problem,
Right, right.
and and that wasn't safe either. That was not a safe environment for me at all. So I ran away a lot, and I ended up joining a gang and spent a lot of time on the streets. I'd get picked up by the police all the time, taken back to the group home, and then
Mhm.
yeah, at my first opportunity, I'd run away again. And I was safer on the streets than I was in that group home.
Yeah.
And I was safe. A lot of people, when I talk about being in this gang, they think like like that's dangerous, and I'm like, no, I was very well protected. We're kids. We're just
Uh-huh.
street kids. We
Mhm.
took care of one another. We looked out for one another.
Like a family, right?
It is. It is. And so my experience with that was not a bad one. It's actually one of the ways I was actually able to become safe, to stay safe. And I was emancipated at 16. Of course, I dropped out of high school because I was moved around so much. When you're in the foster care system, they move you all over the place. So there's like, it's impossible to get an education. It's absolutely impossible to get an education. So I emancipated. I got a job at Walmart and Dairy Queen. I worked there for a while until I was 17 years old and able to enlist in the army, which was my dream. I had wanted to do that since I was a kid. Um,
You have
my
a family member, right? That was in the
Yes,
yeah,
my padrino, my
your
godfather.
padrino. Mhm.
Yes. So my padrino was my mom's high school principal,
Oh,
and that's actually how he became my padrino. So let me back up a little bit. My mom's high school principal, obviously identified that, all right, I've got a 14-year-old student with pregnant, and that's
yeah.
not really right. So him and his wife Stella took my mom in,
Mhm.
helped her graduate high school, and helped her raise me.
Oh, wow.
And then they eventually, after I was born, they baptized me, and then that's how I became their goddaughter. So, but he was a World War II veteran. He was a sergeant in World War II, and he was a prisoner of war. He was a Bataan Death March survivor, and just a phenomenal human being.
Mhm.
And he passed away when I was 20 years old, but I had him for 20 years, and um,
So what happened in those years between 14 and 20 when I mean when you left you escaped? Were they not around? I mean, they sound like they were mentors for you and like a family.
they were
So,
very old.
oh, okay, gotcha.
I mean,
Okay.
he was 60 years old when I was born, and lived
Oh, I
in
see.
a very rural part of New Mexico.
Mhm.
Like population 200.
Okay. Yeah.
So, and I was, they're too old to take care of me. I was
Mhm.
and I was like a pretty reckless teenager, so it was too much for them.
Mhm.
But
Okay.
anytime I would see him, I would get like this lecture, like, you need to get your shit together, you need to get your life together, like, what are
Mhm.
you doing?
Mhm.
And I was just a really pissed off teenager. So I'm like, what do you know, old man? You know?
Yeah.
Um, but a lot of the lessons and the things that he taught me, like, I didn't get that stuff. It didn't resonate with me until like way later in life.
Yeah. Mhm. That's
When we're
usually how it
young,
is. Yeah. When you're
yeah,
young,
when we're young, we don't listen to our
you don't.
elders.
Yeah.
We think
It
we know
kicks
everything.
in later. Like
Hmm.
things start to really make sense years later. You're like, oh, now I see what he meant by that or what she meant by that. Yeah.
Right.
Especially when
Yeah.
when you become a parent yourself, like things start to really connect.
Oh yeah. When you become a parent, it just everything starts making sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh shit, that's what they meant. Yeah.
Wow,
So
what a story. So, okay, so then you joined the army at 17.
I joined the army, and I served in various capacities. I started in logistics, and I worked in logistics, and I worked in an arms room, and I did supply. So I did that for a couple years, and then I found out that the military had photographers and journalists, and I'm like, holy shit, I want to do that.
Yeah.
So I transferred over to a public affairs detachment and became a photojournalist, where I did that for a couple of years. And while I was on assignment covering a story for a new team that had stood up, a weapons of mass destruction team, I was
Mm-hmm.
on assignment, and the commander, he pulled me to the side, and he's like, hey, do you want to join our team? And, I had just spent 2 weeks with them. I was covering a story on them, and I was like, oh, hell yeah, I want to join your team. And this is badass. Like, the stuff they were doing,
Right.
um, it was like emergency management, and
Uh,
we were they're basically first responders to weapons of mass destruction incidents. So
mm-hmm.
anytime like there's a threat to the environment, or
Mm-hmm.
the people
Yeah.
on our homeland, those these National Guard units are deployed. Every state has one. Texas has two,
Mm-hmm.
and California has two, just because they're so big. But so I joined that team, and I was the first enlisted female to join that team, and the only enlisted female for about 9 years. And that was an incredible experience. I gained so much knowledge, training. We worked with a lot of federal agencies, state agencies. And matter of fact, 20 years yesterday
Uh-huh.
was the incident with Space Shuttle Columbia, when Space Shuttle Columbia went down.
Mm-hmm.
My unit was actually activated and deployed to Texas to help with the recovery efforts,
Right.
because,
2003, right? Yeah.
uh huh,
Yeah.
yes, February 2003.
I remember
February.
those days too. I was pregnant with my son, and I
Mm-hmm.
remember when it happened. Yeah. 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 Gosh, it's bringing back memories. 20 years ago of that. Yeah. So you were
Yeah,
deployed to I guess because it happened over Texas, right? I mean, there was some debris over
Texas. There was Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana. The debris was it was scattered all over that
Mhm,
region.
mhm.
So yeah, we went out there and it was such a meaningful experience because um, of the 7 astronauts, 6 of them were veterans.
Oh, wow.
All but one, the female PhD, was not a veteran, but everyone else was. So it was very meaningful to do that work,
Mm,
to be part of something, bringing them home and, putting, collecting all the, basically collecting all the pieces
mhm.
and, and also just providing, that was our first national response.
Okay, yeah.
And, um, but that was just like one of many humanitarian missions that I was on.
Mhm.
I've worked 3 hurricanes, Ike,
Uh-huh.
Rita, and Katrina,
Mhm.
and we provided operational support. We did, recovery. We would help with search and rescue. We would help with, because our unit specialized in WMD and in chem and bio. We would go and assist to help with the like the environmental protection agencies.
And was it a toxic environment in terms of, like, chemicals or, that you guys could be harmed, physically harmed? Or were you prepared? Did you go in there with, like, hazmat suits and
Oh no, we were very prepared. Yeah,
Okay, okay,
we had
okay.
over 1,100 hours of training. We were trained for
Wow.
that kind of stuff. So
Mhm,
yes, so we were very well prepared for those things, for disaster preparedness. So
mhm.
that was like I said, it was an incredible experience. We worked with the Center for National Response. I worked with NASCAR. We'd go out to NASCAR to provide support to do air monitoring. Because it's such a large event,
Mhm.
and anytime we even worked, my unit even worked at the Super Bowls, several Super Bowls. Providing um, air monitoring and stuff like that. Just
Uh-huh.
because if there was ever going to be a WMD attack or something like that, kind of like what
Mhm.
happened with 9/11, they target large areas like that, or
Okay.
large mass crowds.
Mhm.
So I got to do some, like I said, I got to do some pretty cool stuff
That's
and work with some
amazing.
pretty cool agencies. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Okay, so then that takes you to the next part, right? I think you worked in drugs or
Yes.
milking or something like that. I think
Yeah.
that's what I read.
Right. So
Substance
I
abuse.
right. Um, so while I was on the WMD team, because that was my National Guard unit, okay? But I worked full time for the National Guard with I worked with the Innovative Readiness Training Program, which is the Southwest border. So that's the border, Mexico and the New Mexico border.
Uh-huh.
And I worked that for a couple years. When I was 24, I was the operations NCOIC, which is non-commissioned officer in charge. Even though I wasn't a non-commissioned officer, I was only a specialist, but I oversaw the operations for the border project.
Mhm.
And we would rotate units, construction and engineer management units, to come out and work on the fence line. And also we did like the Navajo Nation Habitat for Humanity, building houses for low income areas. Um, and then from there, I went to work with when that project ended, I transferred over to the counter narcotics program, the counter drug program. And that I was there for like 12 years, I believe. But um, we work with Border Patrol, the DEA, the FBI, HIDA, and state police to obviously, you know, help keep drugs out of our United States.
Mhm.
We have a big presence on the border,
Mhm.
and we assist Border Patrol with drug seizures and stuff like that,
Right.
and just keeping drugs out of the United States. Uh, after after I worked that project, I was appointed as the state joint substance abuse program coordinator, and I oversaw the drug testing program.
Mhm.
And during that time, I was also the victim advocate for my brigade and the counter drug program, which is about, to give you an idea, 1,800 soldiers and airmen. And that's that was going really well. I did really well in that program until
Uh-huh.
this is also where everything fell apart for me.
Friends, I want you to meet my favorite bilingual realtor, Elmer Garcia. You all know that a passion of mine is real estate investing, and having a great realtor by your side is essential. Elmer knows the city of Houston like the back of his hand, and not only is he highly regarded by his clients, but also by the professionals in his field. I can tell you from experience that he is attentive, trustworthy, thorough, and detail oriented. He knows what I like, y'all, and seeks out opportunities for finding the right property for me. His services range from residential real estate to commercial and investment. He will guide you the entire way, I can tell you that. You can email him at elmerg.realtor@gmail.com or call him at 832-512-5752, or you can also find him on Instagram, Elmer Garcia_real estate. And don't forget, anything real estate is his forte.
I had a subordinate that worked with me,
He was a
and
subordinate, he or she.
it was a she.
Okay.
And um,
And how
I was
many
having a
years? Let me just go back. How many years have you been in the military by then? By the time all of this starts to fall
14,
apart, you've been in the military for 14 years, and
14
so
years.
14 good years. You've been a part of like some big programs. You've been a part of some of amazing I guess rescues, or working in the border, working with NASA, and then 14 years, and then something happens. You have a subordinate, and it's a female.
Right. And after about 5 months of working with her and trying to get her trained and trying to, um, just get her to do her job in general, I became very frustrated because she just
Oh,
had a very I can do whatever I want kind of attitude. And so I went to my boss, uh, was an officer, and I said, hey sir, I've got a serious problem. We've got we were at our this is in 2011,
okay.
and we were at our highest drug positive rate in 5 years.
What does that mean?
And well, in the military, we're people.
Uh-huh.
We have alcohol and drug problems just like everybody else. And
Got it.
the
Okay.
military is really good about, offering rehabilitation to us because they want us to be back on our feet.
Mm-hmm.
And we have programs that we get grants from the state that will, help us to get over our drug addictions and rehabilitate us.
Mm-hmm.
And so my job as the drug testing coordinator is to ensure, the safety of my state.
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't want a soldier high on heroin on behind the wheel of a Humvee on the interstate.
Right.
You know
Mm-hmm.
what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Because if something happens and he kills a family of four,
Yeah.
we don't want that smoke. So but my subordinate, again, she did, like I said, she just had a very I'll just do whatever I want kind of attitude. And the reason being is because she is the daughter of a three-star general.
Mm-hmm.
So when I reported her, she called up her dad,
Mm-hmm.
and basically just my life was made a living hell. I experienced extreme harassment, retaliation. I was relieved of my position and reassigned to one that didn't exist. And then,
Did you get called in to give your point of view, or was it just an immediate, like, it's your fault, it's you shouldn't have done that, you shouldn't have called it in, now you're going to be retaliated upon?
oh yeah, I mean, I filed an EO complaint against her, and
And EO means what?
equal opportunity,
Okay.
because
Okay.
my boss directed me to do that. He's like,
Uh-huh.
you can file a complaint if you want. He's like, no one's going to help you. I
Uh-huh.
mean, he flat out told me, he's like, no one's going to help you. He told me that he was not going to bite the hand that feeds him
Mm,
because here's the other problem. Her brother
mhm.
was the chief of staff, and her other brother was my brigade command sergeant major. So the nepotism that exists in the National Guard is it's very much a thing.
Right, okay.
And it's pretty ridiculous. And this happens everywhere. Like this is I am not unique, Alicia.
Yeah, uh-huh.
I mean, this happens so much that um,
I mean,
it's really sad.
it's pervasive, and I think the thing that really shocks me or really gets me intrigued is the fact that it's happening so much in a consistent way, and it doesn't seem to be being fixed. Like I keep hearing a story after story after story after story, and like nothing ever happens. Like nothing ever gets
It's
done.
power. It's power. You're dealing with high ranking officers. It's what it is it's abuse of authority, Alicia.
Mm-hmm.
It's abuse of authority.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like it. Mm-hmm.
And the defining difference is leadership. Because if leadership is doing the right thing and setting the example, then you're not going to have
Yeah. You nip it in the
half
bud.
half the problems that we have.
Mm-hmm.
Sexual violence in our military, sexual misconduct remains very pervasive. Why? Because there's no accountability, especially at the top, and the fish rots from the top down, from the
Yeah.
head down.
Yeah. What sort of retaliation, what sort of things did they do to you to harass you? I mean, I'm thinking she went to her dad. Her dad called, I guess, his subordinates and they
His
implemented
son,
harassment.
her
The
dad called
his
yeah,
son, her brother, and then he implemented a series of retaliatory measures against you. What are
right.
some of those things that they did?
Okay, so for example, all my support staff was pulled, and now I'm doing the work of 4 people. Then
Uh-huh.
they loaded more work on me, and then they were reprimanding me because I wasn't working fast enough.
Mhm.
And then they would lock me out of my office. I'd get locked out of my office. Um, I ended up hurting myself in my supply room. I was working really late. I mean, I was working like 12-hour days,
Mhm.
and I was in my supply room and I was on a ladder and I was getting some boxes down. And I'm only 5 feet tall, I'm like 110 pounds. And in 2008, I got a hernia because I went to school too soon after having my twins via C-section
Mhm.
and pushed my body a little too hard and got a
Right.
hernia.
Uh-huh.
So now, fast forward to 2011. This is November of 2011. I'm in my supply room and I'm on this ladder and I was getting some boxes down and I had it like over my head. And right as I was like stepping down from the ladder, I aggravated my hernia. I could feel
Mm.
it. Like I felt like my stomach ripped open.
Oh my goodness.
And I went to the ER and they were like, yeah, you aggravated your hernia. So I was scheduled for a December 6th operation to repair it. Okay. So I notified my chain of command that I was injured and that, okay, now I really need staff because I can't do things now. Like now I'm even more, and they were like, oh yeah, we're going to get you help. We're going to get you help, but like zero help.
Yeah.
Like there was nothing. And the harassment just continued. I know now I'm having to go to the doctors. Now,
Yeah, there's
I,
lingering effects.
yeah, and I would tell them about the harassment that I was facing.
Yeah, who were
Um,
you telling? Were you telling
I
anyone
talked
else
to,
besides the
oh
people
yeah,
okay.
yeah, I
And no
spoke
one
to
could help you
JAG.
because there was a chain of command. And so
Correct.
they superseded whatever help you could have gotten. They were gonna still say, "No, you still have to harass her. How dare she, put a complaint on this person?"
Right. That's
Wow.
it. Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Nobody, nobody would help me. I had a meeting with JAG. I had a meeting with the EO. I had a meeting, and even the EO, the EO Sergeant Major, she, she blatantly said it. She says, this is a leadership issue. And
Mhm.
I'm like, it is a leadership issue. That's not a question. But nobody was willing to do anything about it because of all the fear, because of
Yeah.
who was involved.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It was like nobody was going to piss off the boss,
Yes.
or the boss's daughter at that. And
Yeah.
mind you, this 3-star general was retired. But
Oh.
yes, but that influence, there's a lot of influence
Mm-hmm.
there.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just his influence. So
Did
whether
you?
or not, like,
Yeah. Did
even
you
whether or
know that?
not he was,
Yeah. Go ahead.
whether or not he was involved or not, I don't know. But just his influence alone, right? Just
Right.
created all this fear, and nobody was willing to do anything about it. And then, of course, she took it to another level, and now she's telling everybody that I was harassing her. And I'm
Um.
like, it could look like harassment when you're being held accountable for your duties.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Especially when her whole career, I don't think anybody ever held her accountable for shit.
Did you
So now
know
here
she was the
here I come
daughter of a
around.
three-star
Oh
general?
yeah.
You knew
Oh
that,
yeah.
and you still submitted the complaint, but you didn't
Yeah.
think it would be taken that far. You thought
I
somebody
knew
would call her up on it, and that would be it.
I honestly didn't know how it was gonna go,
Okay.
but I didn't care because I had to do something. And I'll tell you why. I had a female who had been assaulted and turned to heroin and methamphetamines to cope. Okay.
Mhm.
So that was the catalyst for everything. That was what made me go to my boss, because I went to her and I said, "Hey, I need you to keep an eye on this soldier." You know, um, I couldn't give her any information as to why, but I didn't have to, because it's her job to monitor, um, service
Mhm.
members that were in rehab.
Mhm.
And when I went to get a follow up on her, I asked her, "Hey, how's so and so doing?" This was her response. "Oh, her? She's a lost cause, and I don't have time to be chasing her around." And that was it for me. I was like, "Who the fuck do you think you are?
Uh-huh.
You don't get to pick and choose what soldiers you're going to help. You don't get to pick and choose. Like, you don't get to play God."
Mhm.
So I told her, I said, "I'm going to ask that you be removed and reassigned somewhere else, because I need someone in this job that's going to take it seriously,
Yeah.
because it's a position of trust. You're dealing with people who are already broken, and
Mhm.
they're, self-referring is very hard to do.
Right.
It requires an enormous amount of personal courage to do that.
Yeah.
So if you have a soldier come to you and says, "Hey, I'm struggling with addiction," you know, it's our duty
Mhm.
to get them back on their feet. You know what I'm saying?
Of course, of
And
course.
yeah,
So,
and
okay,
she just didn't give a shit.
they didn't give a shit and they retaliated against you. And then you retired in 2014,
I
correct?
was I was medically retired for post traumatic stress due to hostile work environment
And that's
at 16
documented,
years.
right? That's documented.
Yes.
Everybody, yeah, everybody knows that.
Yes.
And so now you filed a lawsuit against them. And what is the lawsuit about?
So I've been fighting for 10 years, Alicia.
Wow.
I didn't just file a lawsuit. Okay. I've been
Oh,
fighting
so
this for
you've been
10
fighting
years.
this 10 years. Oh my goodness.
I have been fighting this for 10 years. I've been fighting this since inception of this whole mess, since 2011. I was removed off of active duty in 2012, and that's when my dispute started. That's when I filed my DoD IG whistleblower complaint under the Whistleblower Protection Act, mind
Mhm.
you.
Mhm.
But I can tell you right now that that is just a piece of paper, and it's not even good enough to wipe your ass with, because it didn't protect me at all.
Yeah.
And so now what I'm doing is, I finally just stomached it and just retained an attorney.
Mhm.
And my complaint is that, you know, my leadership lied, because during the investigation, they just lied. They lied and they were like, "Oh, we ran out of funding. So that's why we had to let her go." It's
Uh-huh.
bullshit. It's all bullshit. You know,
Wow.
I They denied the harassment I faced. Even though I've got medical records that say otherwise. I was hospitalized several times for suicidal ideation, for exhaustion, for hostile work environment. And
And all of this was a
all
consequence
of this
of
is,
that particular situation.
yes,
Oh my goodness. Okay.
yes. So what I'm doing is I'm still fighting it, but now I have a legal team. So, up until a few months ago, I have been trying to do it on my own, and I'm just stonewalled. I'm just, the Department of Defense has a way of doing things, and it's called delay, 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 deny until you die.
Uh-huh.
They'll stonewall you and they'll just drag things out, and because they hope they want you to give up and they want you to go away, and they know that we don't have the money to go up against them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I it took 6 years to get a copy of the investigation, Alicia.
6
6 years just to
years.
get a copy of the investigation.
You
Yes.
know what? Oh my goodness. And
They
I
do that shit on
realize
purpose.
they do it, yeah, because they're roadblocks. They're roadblocks so that you don't keep pushing because they want to tire you out so that you don't
Yeah.
keep going.
And
You
they
know?
all and they also wanted me to meet the statute of limitations because there's statute of limitations on all this shit.
Mhm, mhm.
So like right now what they're arguing is, oh well, it's already been 10 years. Like it's too late to even do anything about this. And I'm just like, no, screw you. Because I've been trying to do this. You
Mhm.
guys are the ones that are stonewalling me, delaying the process, denying me my rights. And
Yeah.
and that's what I'm doing now is I'm publicly calling them on all their bullshit. And I'm I'm letting the whole world know like how the process, because I think it's really important for people to understand why we have such a high suicide rate. I
Mhm.
mean, we've got a lot of veterans walking around with moral injury.
Uh-huh.
It's betrayal. And
Mhm.
betrayal is worse than war because, these are our leaders. These
Mhm.
are people that we would go to war for. We would take a bullet for these people. And for them to just treat us like we're disposable and like we don't mean shit, like they don't care. My leadership would have rather have handed my children a folded flag than to do the right thing.
Yeah.
That is that is not integrity, that is not honor.
Disgraceful.
It's extremely disgraceful.
Disgraceful. And
Mhm.
it's sad, it's pathetic. And I think that, for those of us who are learning about all of these, I think for me, the catalyst for learning about this was the Vanessa Guillen situation here close to my
Yes.
house. It happened literally very close. I know the school where she went to school. I mean, that opened our eyes to a lot of things. And I think even younger people would know what was happening if that didn't happen to her. Unfortunately, it's like a sad situation needs to happen in order for us to open our eyes and to realize the
Yes.
atrocities that are happening, the sexual harassment that's occurring, the way
Yes.
that she was denied, the opportunity to speak to anyone. She was so fearful for herself that she couldn't even open up to someone to say what was going on. She didn't even want to tell her mother. And her
Mhm.
mom knew something was going on with her. I mean, I'm astonished that this is just it's so pervasive in the military and nobody really does anything about it. And you're fighting a fight kind of on your own. You're kind of like going against the current by yourself. Literally,
Yeah,
literally
literally.
fighting and like trying to stay afloat and trying to swim against the current.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I can't
When I
imagine
found out when I found
what
out
that's
Vanessa
like.
Guillen went missing, that was the day I became an activist. That was the day I became an activist, and I have not put it down since then, ever since then. And, if you look at my Instagram and you scroll down to like, June of 2020, if you look at my Instagram, you're going to see, like I had moved on from my life, right? Like I had moved on because I had to. I had to go
Mhm.
find a new dream.
Mhm.
My dream was taken away from me. And then, one day I just was scrolling Instagram and her face popped up and it's like missing soldier. I'm like, what the fuck?
Mhm.
And so I dove right into that.
Mhm.
And um, I mean, I found out that LULAC was leading the charge. So I called up LULAC and I said, hey, this is who I am. And I know exactly how this shit works.
Mhm.
And I got appointed to the National Committee
Mhm.
for Military and Veteran Legislative Affairs. And, we worked very hard. A lot of us, there's a lot of people that worked very hard on that legislation. And um, in 2021, the Military Justice Improvement and Increasing Prevention Act, which was in conjunction with the Vanessa Guillen Act, was passed. And then I also led a national campaign for the Brandon Act, which is a suicide prevention bill that will allow service members to self-refer to the hospital without getting punished, because that's what happened to me.
Hmm.
I self-referred myself because I was experiencing suicide ideation, and I was punished. I was kicked out of the army. They said, "Oh, you're not fit for duty." And I'm like, "Well, you fuckers are the one causing the mental breakdown."
Yeah.
You know what
Yeah.
I mean? It's like, screw you. So,
They
um,
cause it.
they
You
caused
you
it.
suffer for it, and then they punish you because they made you suffer. And how dare you, go in there and blame us or whatever. I don't know. That so sounds so stupid.
Right. And my
I just
message to
it's
them
hard
is,
to
how dare you
fathom.
disrespect my service?
And how dare you disrespect your service?